Okay, hello everyone. Can you hear me? Because I have no idea. Evan says yes. Great news. Right, let's start. Let's close this. I'm just gonna. And can you see my screen? Brilliant. Okay, great. And do I have my sound on? That's the other thing. I do. I guess if people speak, then we can find out. So hello, good morning, and welcome to the first Argo community meeting of 2020, and also the first community meeting just specifically for Argo Workflows. We're going to cover some exciting new stuff today, and we really appreciate you coming along in such great numbers. It's good to have a New Year's resolution. Maybe every New Year's resolution is to come along to Argo community meetings. That's a great resolution if that's your resolution. A bit weird, but good, fine. And this is also the first kind of Argo Workflows only community meeting. And in the past, what we've done is we've combined the Argo community meetings together to one. But what we've really found is that people are really interested in one particular topics. And so this is an opportunity just to kind of really focus from hopefully around 30 minutes on what we've got coming up in Argo Workflows. So let me just tell you a little bit about what we're doing today. And I'll just take us onto the agenda slide here. So we're going to do the introduction, which is this. Then we're going to go and do a demo of the new user interface coming in version 2.5. Then we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into a couple of features coming, which are new features called Cron Workflows, the API server, and a thing called the workflow archiving. Obviously, for those who are new, our Argo Workflows is a workflow engine runs on Kubernetes, so it's cloud native, and it's particularly popular, we found recently, with people running machine learning workflows. And we've spoken to people from companies like Cray who are doing a lot of this stuff as well. So that's quite interesting. Who are we? Well, the people you'll be hearing from today are myself, Simon and Bala, and we are three of the four, I guess you'd call core Argo Workflows developers into it. And there's a team of around 8 of us working on the Argo projects in general. And we've been really focused in the last kind of 6 weeks to 3 months of looking at Bar on these new capabilities. And we're pretty excited because Argo Workflows 2.5 is probably going to be the biggest release for Argo Workflows since version 2. I did say version 1, but I have been corrected. Version 2 apparently was quite a big release as well. So if you want to ask any questions during this, we don't have any process for this so far. So drop them in the chat on the Zoom, and maybe somebody will pick them up. Oh, there's a finger going up in the room. That's not part of the process, but fine.
After the demos, we'll open it up for Q&A to prioritize backlog roadmap.
Good idea.
And you want to check some of the users who joined, whether all of them are new users, experienced, whether any of them are running large-scale data processing or machine learning workflows.
I think they can really improve.
I don't know whether, but given the amount of people who joined, whether we can go one by one with the intro,
or in the chat. Maybe people will say that.
Or just add it in the chat. Yes.
I don't know if you heard Mukalika there. Give me a thumbs up if you heard her. Okay. No? Yeah, I got one thumbs up, and one thumbs up from Mukalika herself, which doesn't really count because she obviously can hear herself. She says, "Well, what we want to do at the end of this is do a Q&A." And maybe we can talk about roadmap, and people can tell us what they are particularly interested in or kind of looking forward to at the end. And if you want to kind of introduce yourself, just say, hi in the chat room, and, where you're from, as in what company you're working for, and also maybe a little bit about what you're using Argo Workflows. We'd really like to hear about that, actually. We're kind of really keen to know what people are using Argo Workflows, or what they want to use it for as well. Those are really interesting stuff. Okay, that's the introduction. So I promised a UI demo today, And this is an early version. Let me just, it doesn't work particularly well full screen, works better for some reason 2/3 screen, of the new user interface for Argo that we're going to be introduced. So the existing user interface is written in Node.js and React, and we're going to replace it with a thing called the Argo server. And we'll talk a bit more about that in detail, but the Argo server is going to be written in Golang, which allows us to leverage a lot of the Go related libraries that we use for it and add additional features more successfully, and also use kind of more sophisticated security models than we have used in the past. And also allows us an opportunity to kind of refresh the user interface. So some of you people will probably be familiar with the user interface. What you'll see now is there are a number of new icons on the left-hand side. And what we'll do is we'll probably just go through those guys in order to show you some of the new things that you can do within those areas. Okay, so the first area here, of course, is the existing workflow timeline view. A couple of changes to this view is there's now a namespace filter on the top right-hand side, so you can filter by the namespace you're using. And also another search here, so you can search for your workflows by name and go into them and have a look at them. You'll also notice there's a new button here, Submit New Workflows, that allows you to create a new workflow from the user interface. If you just click on that, you'll see you get this YAML here, and you can just enter, you know, a couple of details. This is an early version, so the namespace currently defaults to default, but actually this configuration always has to only has permission to read and write from the Argo namespace. So just click submit, and it'll just take you in, and your new workflow will just start running there and then from the user interface. You'll also notice some additional changes to this, the existing one. You'll see there's a number of new buttons on the toolbar here as well, the ability to kind of retry, resubmit, and delete workflows. So that's a new feature. And there's been a little bit of a refresh to this part of the user interface here around displaying logs now. So there's a new log view which tells you which container you're looking at, but otherwise kind of functionally the same to it. The second new area of the user interface is around workflow templates. I'm just thinking how to describe a workflow template. A workflow template is, or has been submitted by one of our developers, Daisuke, and it's basically a way to kind of template a workflow here. You can go in here again, you can create a new workflow template. I need to type in the namespace to fix that. And then you've got a new template here that you can edit, and you can then submit this as a normal workflow. So that allows you to create a library of workflow templates that you submit in new workflows. Tab 3. Tab 3 is Cron Workflows. I'm not going to talk about this in depth because Simon's going to come around to talk a bit about Cron Workflows. But in summary, it's a cron job for workflows. And you can go in here again, you can create a new workflow, you can edit the workflow, and it shows you information about this workflow. And this workflow here is currently being submitted every minute. And actually we can see that appearing here as these different lovely dragon workflows once a minute. So that's a few seconds ago, and this one down here is 2 minutes ago. Our user interface is exciting. The fourth new area here is around archived workflows. So archiving of workflows, again, we're going to talk a bit more about this in detail, is the ability for when a workflow is completed, it's saved into long-term storage, and that can be the form of a MySQL or Postgres database. That means that you can just keep in Kubernetes, just the workflows you're operating today. And if you want to keep something long-term, the goal is to keep it for months, and be able to archive thousands of workflows. It gets put into an archive, and you can actually go into and see a similar view to the standard workflow view here. And there are a couple of small differences around this because there are a couple of kind of notes around how archive workflows interact with existing or more recent workflows. And then you can actually just go and resubmit that archive workflow as a new workflow in the same way that you could have done for a Cron workflow. I'll make sure that. And then the fifth new area here is actually a login area. So we're bringing in some new security into Argo in version 2.5. A couple of new features: the ability to run the user interface as a local server on your laptop using Argo server, and it'll actually use your kube config to use its permissions rather than what the Argo UI does now, which is use the service account that it's been deployed with. So that's a new way. We call that a local mode configuration. And actually, obviously, you can still run this user interface in a hosted mode, and it will take the kube config of the service account. Or we're going to have a way for you to tell the user interface to use a particular kube config for doing it. Okay. Have I missed anything?
No.
Looking around the room, some shaking of their heads. So that's the new user interface. So I'm just going to go back to the agenda here. And we said we would do something on Cron Workflows. Mm-hmm. So Simon, do you want to share your desktop? And
sure. Actually, you can just go to the slide for me. I feel like that would be easier.
You just want to go to the slides. Yeah. Okay, we'll just go to the slide. Okay.
And then if you could mute your mic, I can unmute my mic.
Sure. Let's see if I can figure out how to mute my mic. I'll just, how about move my laptop close to your face?
Yeah, sure. Okay. We can also do that.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Simon. 1 second. Hello, everyone. My name is Simon, and I'm also part of the core Argo Workflows team. And I recently worked on implementing Cron Workflows to Argo Workflows. Cron Workflow was a very well-requested feature. Sorry, some feedback in the room. Was a very well-requested feature by the community. So we are very, very excited that we're able to finally ship this to you guys this week. So Cron Workflows, a quick overview is that it's an independent CRD that is managed by an independent controller. This controller is packaged with the workflow controller binary, so there is no additional installation required for developers. Conversion is very simple. So a Cron workflow is essentially a workflow with less options. So to convert a workflow that you've been using already to a Cron workflow, all you have to do is change the kind to a Cron workflow, add some options such as a schedule, and then some other options, which I will talk about shortly, and you should be good to go. These options pretty much mimic exactly what a cron job options are from standard Kubernetes. Obviously, these include the schedule, but also include things such as concurrency policy, successful jobs history limit, failed jobs history limit, and so on. These have been tested to work pretty much identically to how they work on cron jobs. We also have time zone support. The PRs will be merged soon. So if you have tried this, sort of on your own over the last couple of days, it's not implemented yet, but it should be within this week. And then we also have a Cron Workflow CLI that you can use to manage all of this. It would be Argo Cron, and then the standard verbs such as get, create, list, lint, delete will be available. So just so you guys don't try to make Cron Workflows using Argo Submit, which is only for normal workflows. So I think that covers it all. I'd be happy to answer questions in the Q&A after we're done presenting. Thank you.
I'm going to unmute myself, Bala. You want that? Yeah. Let me figure out how I can do that.
I can go to the... Hi, this is Bala here. So, yep. So the total on 2.5, we are introducing another binary is like not a binary. We are adding another capability as API server, which will support all the API functionalities for workflow template, Cron Workflow, and workflow archive. That API server will support the gRPC support and REST calls. So the client can make a gRPC or REST. And it's a standalone executable, so you can start it as a local mode or hosted mode. And it will support the 3 types of authentications. Basically, server authentication, which will take it from where you are running. Like local mode means the current kube context, kube config. If the hosted mode means the service account where we are running. Then client mode will be like, always looking for the client token from the request header. And hybrid mode is like, it will look for the client token. If it is not present, then it will fall into the service server mode. Here the APIs, like workflow has like a create, get, list, delete, retry, suspend, resume, terminate, and lint and watch on podlock.
I don't see the extreme left.
Okay, what's going on there?
Okay, all right, then continue.
Okay.
Now it's better.
So in workflow template, you can create a workflow template, get the workflow template, list, and delete. And Cron, you can create a Cron workflow, get the Cron workflow, list, delete, suspend, and resume. And archive is like, get your archived workflows list and get the particular archived workflow and delete. These are the things you can programmatically manage your workflows instead of using a Argo CLI or UI. So that's a benefit the API server is bringing to you. So the default authentication is server mode. So it will run on the server authentications. It will take it from the server service account or your local config if you are running as a local mode. Yep, that's all.
Okay, Bala, am I taking you back over? Okey-dokey. Thank you very much, Bala. So Bala's been working on this for some time, so I think he's probably pretty especially proud of it. And I think it's pretty really exciting, some of the benefits you're going to get out of the API server. So we talked a bit about, in 2.4, there's a feature called offload no status, which allows you to run very large workflows. And that does it by offloading into an SQL database. Obviously, none of the Kubernetes APIs can support reading and writing from an SQL database. So the new API server provides you with all those features, and they're obviously all tailored to running, workflows. So we're hoping that people will find this really useful, and they will be able to make it easy to build tooling, SDKs, and that kind of stuff. Okay, so I think we are now done with the demos. I'm looking around the room again here. Cool.
Workflow archives.
What?
Workflow archives.
Workflow archives. Okay, we could talk a little bit about workflow archives. I haven't provided any slides in it. Simon would like to talk about. So in 2.5, we're introducing a new feature called the workflow archive. Now, the workflow archive is effectively just a table in an SQL database where we will save workflows. The current way this works, and we're interested in feedback on whether we're using the right terminology and it's working in the way that people would like, is that when a workflow completes, so that's when the status phase moves into a completed status, such as failed, error, or successful, then we'll actually then write the whole of the manifest into a database table in the SQL database. And then you can then delete that workflow using Argo delete command, or deleting it from the user interface, or even using kubectl delete. And that will delete that workflow from the working step, but it'll obviously remain in the archive. And then when you want to resubmit that workflow from the archive, you can actually, you can do it in a couple of different ways, but the basic way you do is you do an Argo archive get, and then you'd give it the UID of the workflow, and then that will give you the JSON, and then you can do Argo submit on that JSON document. So that's currently how it works at the moment. We're interested if people want it to work differently. And we're also kind of keen for people to try it out and see if it kind of fulfills the use case that they would like to do. It's very easy to misspell the word archive, as I've discovered when writing this. I've misspelt it with E's and I's in all sorts of different orders. So if you do spot a spelling mistake with the word archive, do let me know. I'm sure there's still some lingering around in the code base. Okay, I would like to now open this up to Q&A for the room. If you've got any questions, I don't know what process is. Maybe just unmute and ask your question, I think.
From the Argo team, one question is, how many of you really want to use the persistence feature of workflows? Like, how many of you really want to archive workflows? This has been an ask for a long time, and it took us some time to build it because of other priorities. So have some of you already built persistence of workflows internally, or you want to use this? Anybody?
Okay, so we do have a question in the chat room.
Saying that they use the archiving or the persistence for statistics.
What kind of statistics would you be interested in?
Generally, we have long-running tasks. Like we have some tasks that can take up to 2 to 3 days. So, and we do this on a recurring weekly basis. So, depending on the job, we want to be able to track the time of that job. And we have a whole library built out to do all kinds of stats analysis. So, archiving those workflows into Postgres, and then us being able to import that data into our data warehouse makes it much easier for us to be like, what is the average timeline of this workflow over the course of 5 months? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you would definitely be able to do that kind of stuff in it. What we do currently is there's literally just a text column on the database because we don't know how people want to parse this data, and we've added a few additional columns based on what we think people are likely to want to query, and those columns are name, namespace, start time, finished time, and phase. So they're all in the database, though they're not necessarily indexed. Does that answer your question?
Oh, it wasn't my question. I was saying that's what we wanted.
Okay, cool. Well, I think if your question was, can I do that? Hopefully the answer is yes. I hope we can do that. Chris is.
Yeah, I think the columns we provide. I think what's being shown is that we might not be able to anticipate the query patterns of the users, which kind of makes me think that eventually we may need some way for people to customize the columns that they want, like to maybe a JSON field selector that says, oh, I'm interested in also this other field. But I think for his use case, workflow durations and status, or rather phase, that probably can be achieved with what we are giving in the MVP, because we give those start time, end times, and phase as first class columns in the table. The other part that might be possible is the blanket raw text that we have for the actual workflow could be, at least for the Postgres, might be able to be done as a JSON, I guess a JSON text or something where you can actually query using JSON queries, similar to like a NoSQL database.
Thank you, Jesse. Jesse didn't introduce himself, so Jesse's a principal engineer on the Argo team, and he's one of the original commits from Argo Workflows. He knows his stuff. I'm just going to go back because I just noticed we've skipped over a question from a couple of people here, so I'll try and do them in order, and I'll use my mouse pointer to indicate which ones we're going to do. So Evan asks, do the container logs get archived with the workflow being archived? The answer to that is yes, no. So we don't copy the logs into it, but if you're already using in the configuration under artifacts, you can set to archive logs, and if you do that, they'll be archived to wherever you archive them, which for us is S3. You have to get the configuration right for that to make sure that new workflows don't overwrite your old artifacts. So you can keep your archive logs, but you don't actually need archiving to do that. Can we create a workflow template for Cron Workflows? From Chris Lee. I'll pass the question to Simon.
Let me come over here so we don't have a mic issue again. So if you, by the question you mean of having a persistent workflow that you can run at any time, such as is the case with the workflow template, then the answer is kind of yes, because Cron Workflows, being their own CRDs, are persistent on the cluster, so they can always be run. If you mean that you can reference a cron workflow from, let's say, a normal workflow or a workflow template, you can't do that. Cron workflows are sort of the sync nodes in this dependency graph, they can only, but they can fully reference other workflow templates. So for example, if you have 2 workflow templates on your cluster and you want your cron workflow to run one or all of them, that is perfectly possible. So hand it back to Alex.
Okay, thank you, Simon. So next question is from, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Mahita Deepen. So I apologize if I got that wrong.
No, before that, what is the timeline on?
Oh, sorry, what is it? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, right. What is the timeline on 2.5? So we're hoping to have a release candidate available immediately. It was hopefully today, but we're still trying to do a bit of tidy up on that. So what is the timeline for GA? Hopefully in the next 4 weeks, I would say. Yeah. Crossing my fingers, both fingers are crossed. Sorry, going back. So from Maheta Deepen, how authorization and authentication will work for the new UI? Mm-hmm. Are there going to be different role scopes to permissions? Bala, do you want to answer this?
Yep. So the UI is basically using the Kubernetes RBAC authentication. So if the particular user or the service account has a permission, it can pass the token through that request. It will do that performance. If you're running as a client authentication mode.
Let me also elaborate on this. Okay, so you can think of the UI modes in a couple of different ways. So we got a hosted mode. So this is kind of the legacy or what we had with Argo UI in the past. Basically, I'm an operator. I run Argo UI, and everyone can access it. And the permissions that it has is just what the service account that the Argo server is running is. So if you want to give everyone the ability who can reach the UI the ability to create workflows, you can do that by running it in a hosted mode and giving it like all the privileges it needs. On the flip side, you can also run it in basically with almost 0 auth, like give it a service account that basically has nothing except just reading the workflow controller config map. And if you do it that way, then basically the Argo server you configure with the auth mode so that it relies on a client provided token to perform operations on behalf of the requester using the supplied token. And so the idea is that it's similar to how the way Kubernetes dashboard works, and if you configure it correctly, you can run it with like basically no auth, and then a user can paste their token, like a bearer token, into the UI, and then it's actually using the service, it's using the user config specific to that user to make the request. And finally, there's this a mode that we call hybrid, which is a combination of the two. Let's say I want to give everyone in the company read access to all workflows. So then you give the server get on workflows and templates and cron, but you don't give it create. And then the people who can create would paste their token and then create workflows using the token stored in their browser.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, that explains a lot.
Okay, so we have, I think, one more question from Orion. I think there's 2 questions here, actually. I will ask one. We'll do them one after another. When teaching Argo to others in my company, there's a lot of confusion around the term template, and with the additions of workflow templates, it's even more confusing. Have you thought about this naming collation? I do find it confusing. I'm relatively new to the project. I feel like probably the cat's out of the bag at the moment in terms of template, but perhaps we could do something about improving the documentation or providing better kind of signage in the user interface about that. So maybe we'll take that away and think about it. There's some nodding in the room here with me. Cool. Second question is, curious about Cron Workflows. Does Argo Events already have this? Why build it separate from that? Simon?
I can take that. So one of the main reasons we decided to implement Cron Workflows independently from Argo Events is that we wanted to have developers, we wanted to allow developers to get started on this very quickly. So we didn't want developers to have to also work through Argo Events and get that installed and get that connected. and then add extra permissions for the separate controller. With the Cron Workflows CRD, it's all native to Argo Workflows. So as a result, it works in a much more quick and efficient manner that will allow developers to get started using it quicker. There's also always Argo events, so if developers feel like they need more control, they can also just use that Argo events, of course.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Next question.
Follow-up question on that. Is there a plan to integrate the rest of Argo events similarly into Argo Workflows natively?
I do not think so, no. I think Cron Workflows was the one thing that we felt like developers really wanted, and I feel like re-implementing Argo events past that would just create redundancies.
I think the question is around integrating Argo events into, for example, the UI. And I think the answer to that is, I think we're open to that. I think if there's enough, requests or usage, and then it's definitely something we'll consider. The other thing I'll add about the use cases for events versus Cron. So Cron is really to address the more simpler use cases of scheduling. So like a lot of times, to satisfy the 70% of the use cases where people just want a workflow to run every day at a certain time. And then events was a little bit of a high bar to like get that same requirement met. And so to have, and because we always explain workflows as this thing like a fancy Kubernetes job, it made sense to have a symmetrical experience to a Kubernetes job where we have a cron job and a cron workflow and a workflow and a job. So that experience we wanted to create.
But Jesse, also we are planning to look at Argo events and see how better to integrate Argo events with Argo Workflows, the other events, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Okay, so Evan asks, hang on, no, I'm getting it right. Srivathan, if I get that right. Thank you. I've heard that Argo SDK is also in the offing. Is it coming with v2.5 as well? If so, what language does the SDK support? So kind of stepping back, Argo 2.5 will introduce the API server, which will introduce gRPC endpoints along with the protofiles and Swagger definitions, so you can produce API clients to those. In terms of more kind of first-class support, and people are obviously particularly keen on Python, we know that there's already at least one company open sourcing an SDK in Python for submitting workflows. But broadly, I think we kind of, this is something we want to do at some point, is provide kind of better SDKs.
Can I ask a question here to all the users? So all of you are using Argo Workflows directly. Any of you are looking at also Kubeflow pipelines or TensorFlow extended, because they have their own SDKs, which internally calls Argo Workflows, or all of you are using Argo Workflows directly and would prefer SDK. Somebody said we are building a pipeline there. Okay, so all of you are using Argo Workflows directly, but you're also evaluating Kubeflow. Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah, I think we'd like to have official SDKs put in like under the Argo project so that people don't repeat work. I think so. And then even though we do have the protofiles for the gRPC server, I think there's still going to be need to have some kind of glue on top of the generated files. So, I'd love to see people contribute something to Argo Labs, like a Python SDK, Java. There is actually already a Java SDK in Argo Labs. Yeah, hopefully this is something the community could take up.
That'd be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm kind of aware we've got quite a few questions, so maybe we can kind of keep our answers kind of really short and to the point. If we have time, with the gRPC, is it possible to replace workflow YAML with something like a programming language like Python via protobuf? I think the answer to that's yes.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, next question.
Yes.
Thomas, does Argo API eventually replace Argo events webhook, e.g. can I submit an Argo workflow to the API? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Can I create workflow templates cluster-wide and later use it across the different namespace?
No. Currently, no.
Currently, no.
Currently, the workflow template is a namespace scoped. It's not a cluster wide.
Interesting. Cluster workflow template.
Are there any, so to follow up, are there any plans to, have those thing cluster wide so that any namespace can use it sort of like a template registry? Because the whole idea of workflow template is the other workflows can reuse it. Am I correct? If that's the idea, then why not?
Yes, we can enhance it, which is already in the talk. So you can create an issue, then we can prioritize.
So my recommendation is if you want something done, make sure there's an issue in GitHub. Explain what, really, what's my use case about it. And then the more thumbs up it has, the more likely we are to look at it. Mm-hmm. And of course, the best way to get something done on an open source project is to...
You can contribute it.
Contribute it yourself. I was about to say do it yourself, but contribute it is less. Yeah, I mean, we're really keen for people to contribute new features. So if it's something you particularly want and you have to get your hands dirty, then that would be absolutely wonderful. Do we have, okay, is there going to be a workflow status API? I know the get API returns a lot of information which is not required.
No, we've handled this in the past using field selectors in the APIs.
Yeah,
yeah. So I think with the API, the new API server, we have the potential of doing the same thing we do with Argo CD, which is saying, give me a workflow, but only return status and other in phase or something.
Yeah, please create, if you want this, please create an enhancement proposal in an issue in GitHub, an enhancement proposal, and get a bit of chat going on, get some thumbs up.
Yeah,
or,
sure.
Have a look at the code yourself. And if you're interested in doing it, I'm sure we can do something similar to this. Mm-hmm. If it's been done before, then we probably know how to do it already. Okay, a request for an SDK for Ruby. Okie dokie. Okay. Thank you, Evan. Thank you very much. Okay, any more questions? Going to give you count of 10. Silence.
Any issues you really want to be prioritized, please thumbs up.
Yep. Please thumbs up anything you're particularly interested in. So we need to know what is important to you, and you need to tell, that if you tell us, that's obviously the best way to do it. If you've got any more questions that come to your mind, hop on to the Argo Slack channel and come and ask us there. We're going to save this recording and put it onto YouTube, so you can review it again or review the features. And if you want to try out the new version, we're going to provide that on GitHub, and you'll be able to run the latest version of the images to get this code.
So there's one more question on pausing and resuming workflows. Can you elaborate, Orion, on the because we already do have pause and resume of in-flight workflows.
So I'll give you my use case.
Sure.
So my use case is we're building a custom CI/CD pipeline that requires a human intervention at a moment. So basically, we're going to send out a message via Slack. Someone's going to hit a button saying yay or nay. And when we resume the workflow, we want to know whether they hit yay or nay.
Okay.
And we've looked at different ways of doing that, but they all kind of felt slightly hacky.
Okay.
So,
I can speak to this a bit. There's actually already a proposal and a PR that sort of tries to tackle this problem. You should be able to, I think it's by user Mark9White. You should be able to look at it on the PRs and issues on GitHub. So this would be a great time to add whatever you think should be added to this to make your use case work with this. Thanks for bringing this up.
Yeah, there's also a hack that you may or may not consider it a hack, but what some have done is that they've actually, as a workflow step, they actually hit this public service. It's like a API approval, like SaaS service, and basically all you need to do is your step is really just issuing a long-lived curl this command. I think you can retry it forever if you need to. And then it hits this curl of this SaaS service, and that SaaS service connects to things like Slack and email and stuff. And then the whole point of this service is just to do approvals in some way. I'm not sure if that's something you looked into, but I can find that link that was suggested.
Yeah, thanks. No, that is a pattern we're considering like with the current setup, but it was just like, is this efficient to have a Docker container just sitting there running? Or
yeah, that's the hackiness about it. So I can imagine something like this. Actually, I don't know what the PR is doing, but I can imagine something like the suspend with approval or something like that.
Okay, any more?
Any volunteers for demo in the next meeting, how you're using Argo Workflows? You can either volunteer on chat or in Argo Slack. Alex will remind before the next meeting.
Yeah, I will do. Don't forget to let us know if you're speaking at meetups and you want us to promote about Argo and your things you want us to promote. We can tweet them for you, and we can let people know in the announcements channel as well, which is really interesting. Somebody was doing one in Germany recently, so that was great to know about. Okay, cool, great. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.